I wanted to be a boy one week, I wanted to be a girl next week. It was constantly like that, confusion always in my mind.
The confusion had started early for Tommy Mota. The youngest of 8 in a blended family, Tommy identified more with his mother and sisters.
I was very sensitive. I always felt like I was more in tune to femininity and how they moved, how they talked, how they gestured.
Adding to his confusion, his half-siblings engaged in things he didn't understand.
It was sexual things taking place within the household, within siblings. I wanted to get involved in these things at a very young age. It kind of painted a picture like this was a normal thing.
Tommy's feminine mannerisms brought insults and bullying from his brothers and kids at school.
Hearing faggot, gay, all that stuff constantly, I kind of went into a place of self-defeat. It was very lonely. I was in a lonely place and really trying to have a sense of wanting to belong.
So to fit in, Tommy began using cocaine at 13. During that time, he was also fighting his growing attraction to boys.
I'm already struggling with my whole sexuality. I'm not understanding it, not knowing what it was. I was just very lonely and trying to figure out everything in my life and who can I tell.
At 16, Tommy decided it was time to give in to those desires.
I just allowed myself to really go into that place of what they're calling me, and now I'm just gonna do what I wanna do.
Now addicted to meth, he dropped out of school and began frequenting gay chat rooms and nightclubs.
I did feel like I was wanted. People wanted to be around me. People were gravitating towards me now, more so than I ever felt in my life. So it was very accepting.
Even then, he had a feeling he couldn't escape.
I had an internal knowing that it was just wrong. And here, I just knew that it was wrong.
Despite his doubts, Tommy started taking female hormones and making plans to have a sex change operation. Now in his early 20s, he even asked God to make him a woman.
I said it would just be so much better if I was a female. I wouldn't have to deal with the torment of what I was feeling, of knowing this was wrong, always struggling back and forth, feeling like, honestly, like this was a mistake. This is not it. This is not who I'm supposed to be.
Then one night he woke up after having a bad dream and turned on the TV. A television show was airing a story about a transgender man who'd given his life to Christ and became the man God intended him to be.
Something happened, something changed. I always had a knowing of God and knowing that's not the plan that he had for me throughout my whole life. I just knew this is not what was intended for me.
Tommy stopped taking hormones, but not knowing where to turn, continued to be stuck in the lifestyle.
Still just feeling empty, wanting change, but not knowing how to go about getting change. Am I always gonna be a loser? Am I always gonna be this thing?
Then on the evening of May 9th, 2012, Tommy was doing drugs with his brother and sister when he felt an oppressive, paralyzing fear.
I just knew something was in my apartment. I just couldn't see it. Now I'm feeling hands all over me, but not seeing nothing there.
Terrified, Tommy left the house, went to his mom, who had recently committed her life to Christ, and asked her to pray for him.
I had to cry out to God because I just knew in that moment that he was the only one that was able to help me. So I remember just telling him that I was sorry for how I treated my mother and my father. I'm sorry of the lifestyle that I was living. I just went into this deep place of repenting and asking for forgiveness. I just felt air leave my body out of my mouth, like if I was taking deep breaths or yawns. In that moment, I just had this knowing that I was being delivered. I ended up going to sleep, and then I woke up to a place where I never felt so clean in my life. I was just undone. I can't explain it, but I never felt clean in my life like that. I didn't want to go get drugs. I didn't want to go do the same things that I was doing before, jumping on the chat line, jumping on those websites. There was just something that changed. The desire to be a woman, all that stuff, that got eradicated.
Tommy started attending church and studying the Bible. He also began to embrace his identity as a man.
All that took time, but that's something I submitted to God, where Lord created me what you called me to be from the beginning of the foundations of the earth. You called me to be a man, recreated me in those things. I don't want to live a life where I fail you. I don't want other people to think that you're a God that doesn't save, because the God that I met that night, that changed me.
Today, Tommy is committed to helping others find their true identity through Jesus Christ.
God says Tommy's a champion. God says Tommy's an overcomer. God says Tommy is chosen. If Jesus did it for me, he could do it for you, no matter what that looks like. We all need a savior. We all come from a place of brokenness.